So today we're going to look at the new Winsor and Noon watercolors that I picked up from Amazon. This is the 46 pack, which I believe is their largest pan set. And so I was super excited to try to get all of the colors in one set so that I can really explore the different shades and tones of the watercolor and then also have everything with me. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a swatch sheet. I usually make these on the fly, but I'm getting better at mapping out the type of colors I want to use and doing less trial by error. So in this case, I'm just using my fountain pen to try to write out all the colors that are on the box, because what I noticed is sometimes we have the color that we see with our eye and it doesn't necessarily match, the name of the actual color that is for the watercolor. So in order to get rid of some of that confusion, I typically have decided to just go ahead and make a swatch sheet. And because I'm really into seeing how the color looks on the type of paper that I want to use, I am using a watercolor paper, which is actually quite thick, and I want to be able to see how the colors look on different sheets of paper. So in this case, I'm starting off with watercolor paper and just trying to make a whole swatch sheet of all the colors. This time around, I'm also making sure that I am using enough water. So in this case, I typically, went into this thinking, how do I want to organize the colors? And in my opinion, I noticed that, I didn't really show this on camera, but opening this watercolor palette was a pain. And so I decided to just go ahead and hot glue some of the pans into the actual set. And I think the range of colors that is showing up after I'm putting down these colors is pretty good. Like, I typically love a lot of blues and greens because I love doing nature. And there are at least 3 purples in here. So that also excites me because a lot of times I have to mix purples and I don't really like mixing as much, I'll be honest. That's why I was prompted to just go ahead and buy this full set so I could do less mixing, and if I really was inclined to make a different shade or tone of a color, that was a decision that I'm going to make later on if I really wanted to. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with the range of colors that comes in this pack. They do offer duplicates in this particular set on Amazon, but I don't mind that because, why not have duplicates? It actually helps you. Now, as I'm going through, I'm just going to bring it up a little bit because I want to show you just what the texture looks like for these paints and how they lay down. And now I'm just going to jump into some of the pictures that I've drawn earlier. I am using a Hannah Mule watercolor sketchbook, and I just decided that I really like using line work and then painting over line work. And that was like a whole process for me to figure out because there was just so much trial and error in what I was doing. I was picking pens that were bleeding. I didn't know the difference between waterproof and water resistant. And when I figured all of those things out by getting these fountain pens that had waterproof ink, I was then able to kind of lay down my line work and go over with watercolor because that's just what I like to do, and that's like what I like to work from is having the definite shapes and then going in with colors and different shades. So in this case, I just envisioned an outside area that I can just draw and paint. And I really enjoyed the fact that there was not a lot of granulation in the watercolors. Like, once I laid them down, I did see some pigment, but I felt like the paints move really well. Sometimes when you buy cheaper watercolor, the paints feel stagnant. But in this case, I just kind of felt like, I can add water to this and it won't be diluted to a point where the pigment is lost. And so I'm super excited about seeing, what I can do with the set colors. And then when I go in with the different shades, what's going to happen then. But in this case, I love my greens and I love my blues. And I felt like, okay, I could either lay down these colors now and then add shades later, or I could leave it as is. You don't always have to add shadows to everything, even though, that's a big component of watercolor. But sometimes I just want to do like a quick painting and not feel like I have to go over with several layers. And that just might be my painting style because I know a lot of people love to add a base layer and then let it dry and go over it. But in my case, sometimes I just don't like to do that. Sometimes I just go in and paint, allow it to dry. And if I do want to go back over it with shades, I will. But I don't know. I feel like I paint like I use markers in a way where I'm like, okay, this is the layer, this is what you're gonna get. And I really kind of practice like which areas involve color and which areas don't involve color. And in that case, I just go from there and see how I feel about it. But in this case, I'm looking at both of the pictures that I'm doing and I'm just freeballing it. And I just love the fact that the colors are not muddy and they don't run off on to each other. And so I kind of go through that. And I would say this, because the color range is super important, I find that, I think that there's a good range of greens and blues, like I said before, but I also think that the Payne's gray is amazing because sometimes you'll get overwhelmed by a ton of grays and blacks that don't really have that big of a difference from each other. But in this set, I definitely think that I was able to get several grays and at least two different blacks. And that helped me outline a lot of different things. And I enjoyed that about this set a lot. And I was able to finish this and then jump into my bigger project that I wanted to do. And in this case, I really enjoyed the fact that I could do the line work in fountain pen with waterproof ink, but then also I wanted to see what the painting or what the colors for the painting would look like on a larger sheet. And this kind of reminded me of some of the areas that I've been in my life. I used to live in California, and I used to always visit this Port of San Francisco building. And I love just going into different environments and drawing the buildings and being a little bit graphic about it. I think I have more of a graphic style. And sometimes that's hard to mesh with color because, you have to balance the line work and the color together. But in this case, I really enjoyed being able to do that because there are several types of watercolors. They have the fine watercolors, the regular ones, and the opaque watercolors. I think the Winsor and Newton set is just transparent enough to show the line work underneath. And in this case, I'm just going to go through and see how the watercolor is able to lay on top of the line work, but also accentuate some of the things that you wouldn't see if your watercolor was too opaque. Now I'm just going to finish by removing the tape. I love the vibrancy of the colors that are in this painting. I feel like the colors are very clear, and I'm super happy with how it turned out.